Hey guys! So today you and I are going to talk about making your own tools. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Hi Frederick, I work in a small software company. My boss is very talented and prefers to build many internal tools himself instead using standardized software. I said himself, but I meant himself and an assisting senior dev. Although they subscribe to the idea of KISS, or keep it simple, stupid, it makes it too complicated for junior devs who are not only doing dev work for our clients, but also have to use all their non-standardized internal tooling. My boss sees that as an investment. He owns the code repository, but sometimes he sets junior devs on the and the testers and he sets junior devs and testers' brain on fire because of the many non-standardized approaches. So the question is, does it reward a company enough to own its own tools, or is it better to focus on client needs? I would argue that it is a way off, just as anything. It's the same sort of way off that I preach for when I say that, regardless of if it's internal tooling or if it is something like in your own software, like in a code repository or something like that. Let's talk about, say, third-party libraries, which are a classic one that I get some questions about. Should I use React, Angular, or something like that, or should I use the Zen framework in PHP or something like Laravel or so forth and so forth. Like there's tons of different types of frameworks, right? And the answer basically becomes the same thing here if you ask my opinion at the very least, and that is that you have to make a way off between what are you gaining and what is it costing. Now, in my experience, that the situation that you are describing, that your boss is probably not making that way off for real. He is probably, well, I'm not going to say too much about it because I've worked with many developers like this, and I've had bosses like this where literally the company, I'm not gonna go as far as to say that the choices made by this individual caused it, but the company basically went under due to this person's, in my opinion at the very least, to a large degree, due to this person's way of running a business. And sadly, especially in these smaller companies, there is very little you can do because it's very likely that this person is doing the thing that I tell developers that, at least in my opinion, is the number one thing that determines your level of seniority and your ability to understand priorities and business mindset. So to get into that a little bit, I have to explain to you something that is not that obvious to everybody, and especially not for people like this. And that is that the goal with writing software is not to make you happy. It is not to try to figure out a way to give you a perfect work setup or to give you some some subjective value or allow you to do things in exactly the way you want. No proper job works that way, basically. There's no business works that way. It's just that because you work on something that is highly technical, where nobody can really evaluate in many cases. Like that's what I've said before, guys. But your boss, in many cases, they don't actually know what you do. So the reason why all of this is happening, why you're not getting micromanaged at, say, a code level and what specific libraries you're using usually, has to do with the fact that your business and your customers and so forth, they can't really have an opinion about it. But if you had had a job somewhere else, odds are that other people would have had an opinion about the stuff that you are doing. And so and this has festered into our industry to the point where a lot of software developers, they create super advanced solutions or build their own tools or use third-party libraries or change languages, like they can make all these choices because nobody's stopping them, but they are not making those choices for the good of the business. And so in your situation here, it is very likely that your boss and so forth is basically just doing this because in this person's mind, He's doing something that benefits the company. But the question is that an objective thing? Is he really able to evaluate all the factors? Because as have been saying a few times before, guys, with like third-party tools versus like in like code and things like that versus just building your own thing, it comes down to, do you understand the problem that you are solving? And this third-party library or whatever you might be using is a tool. It doesn't matter what it is. Does it save you money or time or anything like that? It fits your problem really well, and the benefit of just using that tool will get you to production faster or increase your customer satisfaction or anything at all that is objectively a good thing for your company. Is that being improved? Now, a lot of software developers do these sorts of things, and they will do mental gymnastics. You have no idea how many times I've had conversations with software developers who want to use a specific library or a specific way of working that will short term, as they say, oh yeah, it's going to cost us more and more and more, but long term it's going to give us this benefit and so forth. And I go, how much? And they can't answer me. Because as I said, like if you really push them to the point where they have to answer, like sort of, it's basically the same thing as when you would ask for a budget. If somebody asks you, comes to you, like let's say if it's my company and they come to me and say, hey Fredrik, we need 1,000 whatever monies to do this thing, and I would ask, yeah, okay, what do you need it for? Yeah, I need it for this and this and that, and I go, okay, cool, like what are we going to get back for it? Like basically, how do we invest this money in a good way? And they don't have an answer. It's like the Dragon's Den or something like that. Like, then why would I give you this money? Why would I do it? Because you clearly haven't thought about what you're actually going to achieve with it. And you are looking at the same sort of situation. So your boss might not at all care about these things that I'm talking about. He or she may, I mean, if it is their company, or if they have the buy-in from their from like the company to do this, this is basically their playground. And I've worked in companies like this, guys, where, as I said in my little example here, they literally drove the whole company into the ground due to their own incompetence and own like ideas of like innovate all the things and so forth like that. And they were inexperienced people who really didn't have, as I argue, the so-called true seniority. Because as I said, if you make your third-party tool, you have to be damn sure that you're getting something for it, because usually, as you describe here, like if it's a non-standard thing, it comes with a cost. Like making your own third-party, buying a third-party tool or using a third-party library, that has a cost to it, and you have to be aware of that. Those costs, like you have to be sort of roughly aware, like with a price or whatever, like how much is that cost, and what's the cost of building your own third-party library, and then what do you gain from it. And in many cases, people don't do that arithmetic whatsoever, guys. Like the software developers just do their own thing, and I argue that it is the truest sign of seniority when a software, like a more experienced software developer or something like that, like when they check what the cost is. And when I talk about the cost, it's not just, are you going to save a few milliseconds on your like run times, or are you going to run a slightly faster pipeline? Because as I say, usually they don't think about these factors. Like other people might need to work on this code. Are you sure that they're going to understand it? Because I can promise you, your little super optimization that increases that reduces the time it takes to in a pipeline or whatever to run by a minute or two, that's going to be nothing in comparison to the shit that you're going to have to deal with when a junior software developer, for example, needs to take care of your super advanced solution, and because you are on vacation or whatever, they make a mistake, create a bug, and then they have several days, if not weeks, to debug that thing. So what I want you to take away from this is that usually what I say is that when you're picking between third-party tools or libraries or whatever versus your own homemade thing, you have to do a little bit of a cost-value analysis, because if your solution really brings some real benefit, like let's say that your third-party solution, like there is none that really solves your problem, or it's really expensive, then it might be worth having a third-party tool. But at the same time, you have to be honest about whether or not you're making your own tooling and so forth just because you feel like it, just because it's something that you think is going to be interesting to work on. You're indulging your passions rather than making a business decision. And if you are doing that sort of stuff, well, If there is a third-party tool and it's faster, more people know it because the onboarding is easier and maintenance and like all of this sort of stuff. That's what I tell people all the time. Like when people ask me, should I build my client, like if they are like a small business or something like that, my own setup with my own server or something like that, or should I use WordPress? And I go, use WordPress, because if you give them WordPress and they don't have a need that is greater than WordPress, like there's no real customization, then if you do that, they will have access to all the knowledge of the internet. They will be able to get help with it and support and so forth and so forth. It is a better solution for their skill level if the company in question might not have their own developers or something like that, because that is something that is going to help them the most. It might have been more fun for you to like make your own super system and then give the client that and so forth, but it might not necessarily be the best thing for them. And it's the same thing when you pick libraries and frameworks and third-party tools and so forth and so forth. Remember, look at the whole cost, not just the execution time of your code or how many tests you can run faster, so forth and so forth. You have to account for the whole delivery process. And if your solution slows other people down, you're most likely going to have to rethink your solution. The best way to check this, if people are doing things just because they think it's fun versus if they're actually caring about the whole delivery process, is do they check if other people feel that their solution is good before they force everybody to do it? Does your boss do that? Because I do that all the time. If I have a new idea of a new tool or something like that, I usually post in my channels before I even am done with it. I'm saying like, we have these issues. I'm thinking I'm going to write this function, or I'm going to create this class or this CLI or something like that. Does that sound like a good idea? And people will tell me. Usually, you ask for feedback, just as just as you as a business will ask your customer for feedback before you force them to pay for something that they may not want. And if you're not doing that, it's probably a good thing to start doing that, to make sure that you're not actually, fixing one tiny little problem somewhere and creating a gigantic problem somewhere else due to the fact that people don't really know how to use your tool or something like that. And if they are doing this, ask yourself the question, does this seem to be the sort of individual who will change their solution to fit the needs of your company? If you say to them, no, I feel like this special function or thing that you made, it seems a little bit complicated for me. That is the thing that you should be looking for in order to see if people are actually trying to make a good solution for everybody, or if it's just really about them indulging themselves. Have a great day.